Hello.
Hello. It's Experience Friday Live after
It
6 weeks.
Yes.
Yes.
And it's Friday as well as Experience Friday. So that's like special good, right?
It's special good, especially. It's raining here in Cincinnati, but I'll still take it's Friday. And Michael, I'm loving the wild hairdo today.
Well, thank you. I got a quick shower in after my walk this morning, so I didn't really get to make it nice for everybody.
Well, and so everyone's not one. I've had a couple people ask. No, I have not gone bald from the chemo. I just did not do my hair, so I have a ball cap on, and it does look like I may be keeping my hair. And just to give everyone a quick update about that, been through my 4th treatment, 33% of the way through, and plugging along. You're getting me on a really good day today. That's why you'll see our schedules a little changed. Not every week and not always every other week. So our next show is actually on Friday, August the 26th, when we will be back. And love having you guys as well. Don't forget about our new summer edition of the Combustion Chronicles with Zach Hamilton. It's been powerful, where we've talked about, Michael, the difference between experience management and moving into experience as a strategy. And it's 6 episodes, about 10 to 12 minutes apiece. So really easy to listen to, but I believe transformational and what I would call experience 2.0 coming out of this pandemic movement. And I know, Michael, you and I are writing an article that's going to get published about this. So I'm really excited about that. But Michael, tell everyone why we do Experience Friday Live, and most importantly, like how cool our guest is today.
Yeah, and let's take it from the negative perspective today. So if you say that experience doesn't matter, you're basically saying that people don't matter. And in what world do people not matter, right? So even everything that COVID has taught us is that our relationships matter the most, and that when we work together using those relationships, that's when the world clicks along nicely. And when it doesn't, things happen that disrupt and interrupt our lives in ways that cause lots of trouble for us. And so I think that's a good segue into talking what our today's topic is of people matter. Bottom line, people matter. And it is possible to function in the business world, do good things, still make money, and treat people well. And so that's why, bottom line, people matter. And if you don't focus on experience, you are making a statement that people don't
matter. I love it. I actually had a breakfast about this morning with a very influential leader in the healthcare space, that experience matters. And I was privileged enough. I know, Michael, you weren't able to be at the event in Atlanta, when I heard Kisha Payton, who is currently the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at C-Space. She also leads their think tank. She brings over 15 years of experience building cross-functional teams that make change happen. In our words, that make shit happen, right, Michael? A graduate of Spelman College and Duke University School of Law, Kisha combines her nonprofit, legal, and for-profit backgrounds to help companies change the way they view diversity and inclusion. She currently resides in the Big A, Atlanta, Georgia, with her son, Lawson, where she spends her spare time as an amateur iPad artist. We've got to ask about that. I know. So let's welcome Kisha. Hey.
Thank you for having me.
So an amateur iPad artist. Okay, you got to fill us in on that one first off.
It was the pandemic hobby. So I bought my son like a drawing set, and I knew I would need to draw with him and make him do it, and somehow remembered, oh yeah, I can draw too. And so then I bought an iPad Pro. This was my excuse that I wanted the pencil and to draw, and I definitely use it for way more than that. and got into kind of digital drawing. So actually, the painting right here is mine. I got that blown up. Groupon. If you ever see anything that you want to put on canvas, Groupon is a really great option. It's so cheap. So,
I love it.
Right.
I love it. And you've got some fans out there, by the way, Kisha. Like they're dropping in notes, joining from the A. Shout out to Kisha, ready for it. Yes, Kisha.
These are the plants that I put in the audience, basically.
Serious, Kisha is the best.
I come prepared.
You have paid them well. So, Kisha, we're going to get into it, but we ask everyone this basic question right up front. Why do you do what you do, and what keeps you motivated as you do it?
Yeah, I feel really lucky to have landed in this career. I grew up in DC and Atlanta, two predominantly Black cities. Definitely saw Black people in leadership, but I went to predominantly white schools, K through 12. So I know what it feels like to not belong. Back in middle school, and I'm dating myself a little bit, but we used to have an art class, and they would play the radio during art class. And at that particular time, music was much more segregated than it is now. And I remember, like, every couple weeks or so, I'd ask, like, can we please turn to the Black radio station? Is that okay? And I think the reality is there's little things like that I've experienced my entire life growing up. And the reality is I never expected it to change. I always expected to be the one to have to ask. I always expected to be in those rooms and not hear the music I wanted to hear, or not see things I wanted to see. And I think the reason I do what I do today is because I want people to be able to expect more. There's still things, even for me now, where I think, systemic racism is so ingrained that it changes what you expect. And there's so much that we just accept as, this kind of title of the thing, like the world's not created for me, and I accept that, and I expect to have to figure out ways to navigate that. But the expectation was never that the world would adapt for me. And I think the place that we're at in life now, and particularly in this space of CX, and C-Space is a market research company, we actually have the power to be able to make these brands and customers and companies adapt for people more than the majority. And so I get a lot of satisfaction out of essentially trying to kind of change the norm and broaden our idea out of the norm.
Yeah. And again, Michael didn't get to hear you speak. I couldn't remember if you spoke before I did or you spoke right after me. I think you spoke right after me. And
it was a tough act to follow too, Shawn. I was like, I gotta go after him. Great.
Right. It was, the wild guy, right? But it was just your passion, and I loved your title of your talk there, and we put it out here as that this world wasn't designed for you. Right. Like, and that's what you're talking about here. And, we were even joking beforehand, your vacation here, that, like, it's just we acknowledging it and just making space for it. That's what I loved about what you did. And I said to Michael, we have to have her on because she is antithesis of everything that you and I believe. And, I'm Native American. Michael is Caucasian, but we are huge champions for this in such a way. And I love this quote that you gave us, and then I'll let Michael take over and do some stuff here. But this quote, you gave us two quotes that we're going to talk about today, but this first one, if we're not being intentionally inclusive, we're being accidentally exclusive.
Yes. So
I can see Michael. I can see Michael's mind going. So, Michael, I have a question for her, but I know you want to dig deeper.
No, what I would say is if we're not being intentionally inclusive, we're being intentionally exclusive. Like, it's not. There's not accident. There's no accident there. Like, you can be ignorant, but it's still intentional. But that's my lens. I won't steal that from your lens.
Well, and let's just ask this, and Michael, take it. How do you define DEI then, Kisha? coming from that quote.
Yeah, so I want to give a shout out on that quote. I literally just heard it this week at a inclusive hiring summit. It comes from Julie Velaz. So hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right, Julie. But I love that quote. I think it captures so much. It's interesting with DEI because it's definitely a buzzword now. And I also want to remind people that it's a buzzword in like corporate settings. It's not a buzzword necessarily in the like just the masses. If you go up to the average person and say DEI, they don't know what you're talking about. But what's interesting is I think even within kind of the corporate world, we don't all know what DEI is. There's all these acronyms that eventually just get like a part of our vernacular. And then it's like, what does that stand for again? What does it really mean? So diversity, I think everyone kind of understands diversity, but I like to use an analogy of a party. So diversity is the who's coming to your party. How can you change the list up? Maybe you have an annual birthday party, you have your same list. You think about inviting different people and bringing them in and shaking it up a little. The equity piece, and this is the piece where a lot of people think it's equality. There's a difference between equality and equity, right? So equality would be, think back to when you were a kid, you had your birthday party, your mother gave you like, here's your birthday card, give one invitation to every kid in your class. We're going to invite them all, right? But remember, we've got a party where we're inviting new people. They haven't been. And the rest of the people have been coming for the last 10 years. This is an annual tradition. So maybe that one invitation isn't enough because maybe they heard about the party going on and they're like, I'm not sure this is the party for me. So you might need to give them an invitation. Maybe you need to follow up with a phone call. Maybe they're more of a text person. You need to text them. Maybe you need to catch them in person. The equity piece is really looking at everybody does not have to get the same thing. It's how do we tailor that to different groups, so that we can really bring them in. And then the inclusion piece is, once you're at the party, how are you making them feel welcome? So going back to my example in middle school of being in that art class, one very clear way that I could have felt welcome would have been for somebody else to say, what do you want? What do you listen to? What do you want to hear? Or even better, that they just rotated the stations like daily, or if it was random drawing of who picks the music or something that would have opened it up so it wouldn't have felt like I had to be the one off to the side advocating. So when you bring these different people to the party, when you take the time then to like find out the way to really get them to come to the party, what do you do when they're there? How do you make that? How do you create signals and create an environment where they feel just as welcome, in that party as the people who have been there for the last 10 years?
Michael.
Yeah. So it's such a big topic. Where is the starting place to dig in, right? And I think for me, it's, if we're serious about moving the needle with diversity, equity, inclusion, and we're not just doing it to check the box because either it's the cool thing to do or our lawyers told us to.
Mm-hmm.
Which we know happens in corporate.
Absolutely. And it's well-intended. It's well-intended leaders and well-intended white folks.
Sean made the face I was thinking. Sometimes.
Sorry. Here.
Sometimes it's well-intended.
So what's the secret sauce there? What's the key thing that needs to shift or be done to be able to shift from obligation to a new norm?
Yeah, there's no secret sauce. There's no secret sauce. There's no checklist. There's no package it up and do these 3 things and you'll get there. And I think that's the hard part. It really is. It's a customized kind of journey for every company, but even within the company, you've got individuals, right? And with DEI, people as individuals play a role in these initiatives much more than other initiatives at work, because you come with your own biases, your own priorities, your own understanding. So even though a company declares this is where we want to be, you still have a group of individuals who all have different backgrounds and understandings that you have to like move and put in that equation too. But when I think about shifting the norm, a few things. What popped in my head, like as I took some notes kind of before this, was creativity and commitment. And because I'm a storyteller at heart, and then I was like, I have to have a third C too. So I'll start with kind of creativity. This is such an, people have branded DEI as a problem, an issue. I think when George Floyd was murdered in 2020, it was real clear. Everybody scrambled. Oh my God, what are we going to do? This is such a big problem. At this point now, though, DEI is an opportunity, and it's a place where we're able to really be innovative. And if you look at COVID, COVID was that same kind of moment of this is a problem, or we can use this as an opportunity. And there were a lot of brands out there that used it as an opportunity. Curbside, delivery and different, new channels, and Instacart, like, tripled in the number of services it offered. There were so many different innovations that happened there. And DEI can be the exact same way, where it's an opportunity to look at new audiences and how do you serve new audiences? How do you create new products? So I think there's a real place for us to just kind of be innovative and bold and lead. And when you can bring that mindset to it, instead of it being a problem, that will help move things along. The other is commitment. It's, going back to that quote of intentionality, you have to be committed and intentional. This is not a one-off thing. You cannot just have an unconscious bias training and then go about the rest of your business and think that your products and your experiences and your services are going to then be inclusive. Much more than that, it is a conscious act every single day. And eventually you work that muscle enough where it just becomes a part of your daily habits, but it is definitely something that you have to intentionally be focused on. And the third kind of C for me is comfort, but it's comfort with being uncomfortable. You have to get to that space of knowing we have hundreds of years of systemic racism that's in place, and just a world that was created, with different people in mind. And in order to challenge that, you're going to end up in different, doing things outside of your comfort zone. You'll have to do things differently. Sometimes it'll take longer. It may cost longer. You may have skills that you just don't have, but you have to lean into that, and accept it as a learning opportunity, and just accept that this is a way for you to kind of, grow as an individual, grow as a company, and just be okay not getting things right. You will get things wrong, period. Not an if, when. You will get things wrong, and be okay with that, and know that it's not the end of the world. Accept it, apologize, learn from it, move on, keep it going, and continue. So I'd say creativity, commitment, and comfort being uncomfortable are some ways that you can kind of create that right mindset to then start moving the needle.
So that's really funny. And we'll put this out for the listeners out there, and I'll put the link to it. But we did a paper in 2020, and we called Humanizing Our Community, Blowing Up Traditional Models for Diversity and Inclusion. We had not put DEI in at this point, but we talk about 3 mindsets in that, which is really funny to me. We talk about radical relationships. So anybody that knows me knows that I preach radical relationships. Authenticity before action. I think coming back to what you're talking about, it's your stuff. But most importantly, going really back to what is embrace the mess. It's a mess.
It is.
But giving a space to talk about it and be open about it. And I loved it because you also gave us another quote that I thought was truly powerful that you had heard recently too. And it was just simply this: for too long, neutral has meant white.
Yep.
Tell us how that came about, and a little bit about that, because let's embrace the mess, right? Let's get uncomfortable.
Yeah. So this came from an interview we did with a customer. a white customer, and she made it a point to say, she's like, I'm 3/4 Swedish. I'm like the whitest you can be. But she was looking at a couple websites and just double clicking through and looking at who the imagery was on the websites. And she was sharing another company that she thought did a good job and mentioned, for too long, neutrals meant white. And you really have to shift that. And I would expand her quote a bit to say it's white, it's male, it's cisgendered, it's able-bodied. There's a very clear default in this country, and I love that she summed it up. We use it in like everything now, but when you have that lens and start looking at things, then you really see how much is just made with this default of white. So you probably have this as a prompt question after this, but I'll skip ahead, throw you off a little bit. But one of my favorite brands right now is called The Good Patch. It's a newer company. I'm assuming they're smaller. I've got one on today, and you can barely see the patch because it actually like blends in with my skin, which for me, I'm 41 years old and have like never had like these patches that blend in. The interesting thing to me about this company is, in contrast to Band-Aids, who put out, here's the range of skin tones. Not all companies can do that. That's a lot of different products to offer. We have a lot of clients that don't segment in their marketing and communications. This company just said, this is the patch. This color is the patch that everyone gets. So Michael, you order it, this is the patch that you'll get. It's going to show up more on your skin. Like, it's not going to blend in, but guess what? I've spent 41 years of having patches and Band-Aids not blend into my skin. And I think that was such a bold choice. And it was definitely a choice because I had ordered from them before and they had clear patches. So I thought it was such a bold choice for them to decide, we're gonna change what our default patch is. So depending on which one you order, this is a B12 patch, highly recommend, great for energy. But depending on which one you order, you might get a darker one than this, you might get a lighter one than this. And it's so much about like, how often do we just default, even in product screenshots or something, when you have like the name and it says, Joe, Jane, Laura, like how can you broaden that? There are other cultures and ethnicities that have common names. Kisha is the most popular. I've never seen stats on this, but it's commonly known. Kisha is like the most popular Black girl name from the 80s. Like, it just in various forms, Kisha, LaKeisha, Taki, whatever. There's a lot of Kishas out there. Kisha would be that's a good name. If you want a widespread name that signals something, Kisha's a good name. Do I ever see my name in like personalized stuff or in like, product screenshots or something? No, I never see it. But really start to challenge yourself. These things seem so small and little, but they're not, right? They actually add up to these bigger signals around a customer's experience and how they feel that they belong and connect with your product.
When we work with graphic designers, my statement to them is, if you have to use photos of people, which we choose not to as much as possible so that we don't send the wrong message, but when we do, the default is people of color. And I actually worked with someone a while back that said, well, they might think that you're a Black-owned company. I'm like, well, that would be great, wouldn't it?
Right.
And I said the exception would be exactly. I would like to see a deck filled with people of color, of different colors, and if we look at it and decide we need to have a white face in there, okay, we can do that, but that's not our norm. Our norm, because when you work, and to be fair, if you look into the photo banks that are available to graphic designers and you search for whatever pose you're looking for, you're going to get 75% white folks.
Yes.
And then a few other diverse folks that you could use if you wanted to, and we need to flip that, right? I want a deck of Black people, thank you.
If you Google icon, like Google man icon or woman icon, and the ones you'll get have like straight white kind of hair, and then it actually for Google then it lets you drill down further. Then there's like Black or other races there, but that default, soon if you Google man and woman, that default is generally going to be white. So there's so much for us to shift. But what I think is so empowering is that it's actually within our power. I mean, a lot of us on this call have the ability to change the deck, to change the advertising, to change the marketing, to change the website. We actually have the ability to change the experience for customers. And it doesn't have to come from the top. It doesn't have to be, from the most senior, place in your organization. It can be just in the daily things that you do. And as simple as just starting team meetings and giving the space for people to share and really bring themselves to the work, and that starts to show up in your work and in your products and services.
Co-design. I had this conversation yesterday with someone. What if we co-designed how staff meetings should look? Because we bring different cultural expectations to the table for gatherings.
Yeah.
So if we're truly in a business world going to be diverse, equitable, and inclusive, what if start with staff meeting? Start with whatever meeting it is, and let's co-design and encourage, empower, enable whatever the folks of color to say, don't, and this is quoting a person yesterday, don't put your white voice on, don't put your white persona on.
Yeah.
Bring your true self, your authentic self to the co-design session. And let's see what comes up. And it may not be the same meeting that we had yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, and I think
we're getting serious.
Yeah. And Michael, I have to do this because you don't pat yourself on the back enough here. But a very dear friend of ours says, I love Michael. Even for training, he asked for my voice to narrate it. And I have a South American accent. And Kat is a very dear experienced leader in healthcare in Las Vegas that we love dearly. And we at Mophie have consciously done this. Even so, Michael, we just worked on a project this summer. So for the first time, we did a persona in a very different way than we've ever done it. And you want to share that? Because I give this kudos to Michael.
Well, I was down in content writing. And then I ended up having a conversation with a friend whose child is non-binary. And so I was just taking a break for that conversation, and I jumped back into the writing. I'm like, oh my gosh, all of these pictures are male and female. Mm-hmm. We don't have anybody. So we went through and put pronouns on all of our personas. That was the first time that we've had that opportunity to do it. And one of them was a non-binary persona. So just paying attention to that.
But this goes back to, Kisha, what you were saying. It doesn't take a C-suite. It doesn't take me as the leader of the company to say to Michael, we need to do this type of persona.
Just do it.
He didn't tell me until I was putting him up, and he's like, hey, did you notice anything different? Right? And I was like, oh my God, this is great.
And why have we not been doing this for forever?
And why haven't we been doing this?
Yeah.
That's our question we always ask ourselves is, well, why didn't we do this before this, right? But it was cool then to see our client, which was a room full of executives, have that aha moment when that light starts to, and that mindset starts to shift, Kisha.
Right.
That was what was powerful to me. I mean, it was powerful.
And a couple words. All it took was you putting a couple words on that.
A couple words, and they went, oh my God, we don't even think about how we design our experience for that whole spectrum.
Right.
It changed. I think it changed the way we looked at the rest of that event. But it was just one little thing, right?
Yeah, I was just in Cancun for vacation and got a spa treatment and was struck at the moment you walk in. We did a couple spa treatment. The moment we walked in, I'm directed to the women's side and the women's locker room and the women's sauna and steam room. He's directed to the male side and the male sauna and male steam room. And it occurred to me, which this happens a lot with white people with Black things, when people are like, oh my God, I just realized this. And I'm like, yeah, I've known this my entire life. So all of you out there who are trans and non-binary, you know this. But as I'm sitting in the waiting room, I'm like, wow, what happens when you don't identify with either of those? And then that the very moment you walk in the door, you're met with a microaggression essentially. And then you have to make a choice, or you just have to not go at all. I mean, you're just fully not welcome in that space. I think, one of my favorite companies is Warby Parker glasses. And I think, when you think, yep, when you think about, what you said with pronouns, that's a small way, but there's bigger ways too. So Warby Parker stores are different than your average glasses store. There's no male, female, kid side. It's sunglasses and glasses. And then there's wide glasses, narrow glasses, to be able to fit different face types, but they're not assuming that the pink glasses are for the woman and the blue glasses are for the man. Interestingly,
exactly. As you see my pink and red glasses from Warby Parker.
Right? I thought it was, they changed. That's a very long-standing industry standard. And they came in and said, hey, actually, gender is not the thing. Now, what's interesting, though, is that their website is still man and woman. Don't know why. Be much better if they carried that through the website as well. But I think there are these small things we can do. And then there are these bold actions. How do you just start to flip things on its head? Because there's so much of what we're doing that's we've just always done this. This is how it's always been. And you just continue it. And now is that time for us to be able to take a look and say, is this the right way? Is the way we've always done this the way that's going to be the most inclusive? And ultimately, are we going to be able to connect with more customers in a deeper way? It's a revenue generator. This is not just the right thing to do, right? This is a business benefit.
I'm not going to let us jump into that because, Kisha, we're going to bring you back. Because I think what we've done is we scratched the surface on this. Now, the next time we have you, we need to talk about the revenue, the business side of how powerful this is. Because even for Warby Parker, that example, I have a big head.
And I got a narrow head. That's why they were for me.
Glasses, when I had to admit that I needed glasses, was, I like to be able to go into Warby Parker and go to my section and not have to look through, oh, well, I really like this glass. Well, that's not made for you. Yeah. I just go to my section where I know all the wide glasses are. And I'm like, oh, I like that one. And I like that one. And I like that one. And you got my prescription and I don't have to think about it. And so I want to go there. And I want to be cognizant of time because we've held our audience and we've had a huge audience for this. So I know we're on to something. Kisha, best way to get a hold of you, I'm assuming, is people getting connected to you on LinkedIn.
Yep.
And follow her. She posts great stuff. I follow her. Make sure you do that. Kisha, if you will hang out for just a minute backstage, Michael and I will close up the show and then we'll come say bye to you.
All right. Thanks. Thank you so much for having me. Great conversation.
Absolutely. Well, Michael, what a conversation. We got to have her back because we got to talk the business piece. We just scratched the surface today.
I have about 3 or 4 more big topics that I would love to get her insights on.
Oh, yeah.
So helpful. So helpful.
So helpful. Well, if you want to reach out to us, again, mofi.co or ShawnNason.com. You can send us at hello@mofi.co or hello@ShawnNason.com. As I mentioned, our podcast, the summer series, we've got an exciting fall series going to be coming up. Connect with all of us on LinkedIn. And just, I gave a little bit of a shout out, but show you the banner here. It was called Humanizing Our Community, Blowing Up Traditional Models of Diversity and Inclusion. I put the link out. You can go out and download this paper. It's a great paper for you to just start the conversation. And it's got conversation starters. Michael built some great activities around that as well. And most importantly, if you play in this system, we want you on the show. We want to talk about these things. I'm really excited about our show at the end of the month, where we're going to talk about how do we merge customer success and customer experience and the brokenness of that as an industry. So thank you to everyone. Michael, thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.
enjoy your weekend, and everyone enjoy your weekend, and we will see you on August the 26th.